Jealous people around me, I need to change my life. I just turn colder every time I try. What would I do without you, my Georgie? I don't feel that way with anybody.
Hello guys, and welcome back to your girl's channel. So as you can see from the title of the video, this is part 3 of my lace series. I'm going to be teaching you how to construct a wig. So if you haven't already seen my first 2 videos, I have a video on how to bleach the knots on your lace frontal, which is part 1, and I have a video on how to customize your lace frontal, which is part 2. So in this video, part 3, we're going to be learning how to construct your wig. I'm going to be using 3 bundles of Ashley Marie hair in the lengths 18, 20, and 22 with a 16-inch frontal. So if you want to see exactly how it is I constructed this wig, please keep on watching. Like I've already mentioned, this is Ashley Marie hair. It is body wave, but I don't know if it's Brazilian or Peruvian, but I'll make sure to leave it down in the description box. So what you're going to need to make this wig is a Spandex Dome Cap, some thread, a needle, a lip liner, some T-pins, and an elastic band. So I'm going to start off by placing my Spandex Dome Cap on my head, and this is me attempting to draw a straight line, which I know for a fact I can't, so I don't even know why I tried. So I just went ahead and grabbed a ruler, made sure that ruler came down from the tip of my nose so that way I can draw a straight line in the middle of my head, and I went ahead and drew 2 lines on the sides of my ears. This is just to help make sure that I place the lace frontal on the right spots, and my mannequin head is a little bit too small for my Spandex Dome Cap, so I just went ahead and stretched it out a little bit just so that way when I go to sew down my frontal, it won't have any bumps or bridges. I'm going to pull my frontal a little bit in front of my Spandex Dome Cap. This is just to make sure that my frontal lays down flat. And then I'm going to be pinning my frontal in the three spots that I marked. So I'm going to be brushing my hair in front and putting it in a ponytail just to get it out of the way when I start sewing. Now, when I start sewing, I sew in a loop pull-through method, and let me explain. So I just go ahead and stitch through the cloth and the frontal, and then I make sure that the thread is behind the needle so that way when I pull it through, it creates a little loop. And yeah, I go ahead and stitch from the middle of my frontal down to the sides of my head, and then I do the same thing to the other side. This just makes sure that 1, it's easier for me, and then 2, I don't mess up. And if I do mess up, I just unravel half of my frontal and not the whole thing. Every now and again, you'll notice that I'm looping the thread on my needle like 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Yes, I'm doing it 3 times, and that is just to ensure that, again, my needle is not going nowhere, and it's just creating little knots every now and again just to make sure it's laying down flat and it's not going to move. It's not going nowhere. So when I'm sewing down the sides of my frontal, I make sure that I'm only sewing through the cloth just to protect the integrity of the Spandex Dome Cap, and to make sure that it'll stretch. And I'm making sure that I am looping more than 3 times at the very corners, just so that way, again, it's not going to lift, it's not going to go anywhere. And when I've done that, I go ahead, cut off the thread, and I just go ahead and tie a traditional knot. I do that about 3 times, and as you can see, my frontal is not going nowhere, it's not moving, it's not coming up. It's not coming up anytime soon. So we're going to move on to sewing down our bundles. So again, I'm just going to be using the same stitching method, the loop pull through method, making sure that the thread is behind the needle, pulling through, and also making sure that I'm only sewing through the cloth. That way I'm making sure that my Spandex Dome Cap is going to stretch and it's going to fit to my head when I want it to. I mean, every now and again, if you go through a Spandex Dome Cap, it's okay, but make sure you're not doing it with every stitch. Make sure you're just sewing through the cloth, as you can see. And for beginners, a good tip is to use your T-pins to lay down your tracks. This will make it easier for you, so that way your tracks is already laid down and you can just focus on your stitching. I personally still do this, and I've made a couple wigs myself. It just, 1, saves time, and it 2, makes it easier for me to see exactly where where I'm going to sew my tracks, and it just helps me focus on my stitching like I mentioned before, so that way I can just get it done quicker and I'm not here struggling trying to lay down my tracks, hold it with one hand, sew it with the other. No, it's already laid down, it's there, it's good to go, it's secured. All I have to do is stitch it down. So if you do have any other further questions or questions that you think I should have covered or something that I didn't, you need me to elaborate on, just feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. Make sure to check the description box as well, because sometimes y'all just be asking questions that you could just read for yourself. So make sure you check the description box and then you go ahead and ask the questions in the comment section. But again, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I will do my best to try and answer every single one. And yes, I see the thread that is stuck on the T-pin, and that was actually a very simple fix. I just went ahead and pulled the loose thread all the way through until to the point I stopped. Personally, I do not like to use the thread and needle to lay down to make my wigs. I personally only do this when I don't have on my fake nails, which is very rare. So I don't like to do this method. I like to use the glue method. If you guys want to see a gluing method, let me know down in the comment section. I will definitely do that. But again, this is not my favorite method. I know how to do it, but it's not my favorite. I prefer gluing my wigs down, my tracks down. Anyways, we're at the point where our track meets our frontal at the very end. So at this part, I like to pull my needle through my track and through my frontal that way to make sure that it's not going anywhere. And then I do the typical 3 loops around my needle. This is to ensure that it's not going nowhere, it's not going to budge. Sorry about the lighting here. I'm just showing you that I like to space my tracks pinky length. If that makes sense. Just use your fingers to determine how far you want to space your tracks depending on how many bundles you have. And fast forward a bit, we are at the top of our wig. This is how much space I have left before I start to lay my tracks horizontally. And for this, I make sure I go through the tracks at the beginning and at the end of each tracks that I'm laying horizontally. This is to make sure that at the very top of our head, it's not bulky and it's lying very, very flat. Go ahead, use the same stitching method, but we are laying down our tracks horizontally. How much space you leave at the top of your head is based on you. I've been doing this for a while, so I know exactly when to stop. It's when your bundles start to straighten out a bit, that's when you know you need to stop and start laying down your tracks horizontally. If you don't have an eye for those kind of things, a good measure is just the span of your thumb and middle finger. Stretch out both of those fingers as wide as they can go, and that's exactly how much space you will need to leave to start laying down your tracks horizontally. And here I am still double tracking my tracks when I'm laying my tracks horizontally. Like I mentioned before, there's only one part through this whole entire wig making process that I do a single track, and I'm going to mention that in a bit. But yeah, again, there's nothing to this. I'm just making sure that the thread is extremely tight on this part, and this is what it's looking like. And here, this is what I was talking about. This is the only track on my entire head that is single tracked. The track that is attached to my frontal is the only one that is single. 1, because I don't want this part of my head to be bulky at all. And 2, at this part, I'm usually running out of hair. So, I mean, I can only afford to single track it. But personally, I've tried double tracking this part of my wig, and it looks bulky and I don't like it, and you can tell. So if you want a flatter wig, single track this part of your wig. I'm gonna be quiet now and let you guys watch the rest of this clip, and then I'm gonna come back when I start sewing my elastic band. Finishing up the last bit of this track, I went ahead and measured my elastic band from ear to ear, and in this clip, as you can see, I am cutting off the bit of the spandex cap that is not sewn down. For the elastic band, I found mine in Walmart and I found it in the sewing aisle, but if you personally can't find it in elastic band or if you just don't have one, cut off the elastic part of this part of the dome cap that we're going to be cutting off, and you can use that as your elastic band. Just make sure to go ahead and measure it from ear to ear on your head because it is a bit long. So moving on to sewing our elastic band, I like to go straight up from where my Spandex Dome Cap ended, about an inch or so, and sew it down horizontally and not vertically, because I find when I sew my elastic band vertically, it pulls my frontal in instead of pulling it downwards, if that makes sense. And sometimes on the sides of my head you can see my edges, but if I sew it down horizontally you won't be able to see my edges and it'll cover it perfectly. So I just like to sew it down horizontally, and I sew it down just like how I sewed down any track on my head, making sure that the thread is behind the needle. As you'll see in a later clip, this elastic band is nice and secure, and we're moving on to part 4 of the series, where I'll be showing you how to style, sleep, install, and remove your frontal wig.